Let's talk about the landmark judgment that has been delivered over the Indus Water Treaty. And let us tell you that the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague has delivered a landmark judgment that essentially exposes India's illegal suspension of the Indus Water Treaty as a violation of the international law. Let's break down what is actually happening over here. The PCA ruled that it has a continuing responsibility to advance its proceedings in a timely, fair and an efficient manner. It further said that it has the responsibility without regard to India's position on abeyance. This is diplomatic language for telling India that unilaterally suspending an international treaty doesn't make the legal obligations disappear. Pakistan's response is methodical and strategic. Planning Minister Ehsan Iqbal announced the establishment of a special technical committee comprising water experts and engineers to provide technically sound recommendations. This isn't emotional rhetoric, it's evidence-based policy formation involving all 4 provinces. Here's what makes India's position particularly problematic. The Indus Water Treaty has no provision for unilateral suspension. Article 12 explicitly states that termination requires a mutual ratified new agreement. India is also violating the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, which only allows suspension under specific circumstances, none of which apply over here. India's justification for the suspension: they blame Pakistan for an April 22nd attack in Indian-occupied Kashmir that killed 26 people. Pakistan denied involvement, but India has used this pretext to suspend a treaty that guarantees water access for 80% of Pakistan's farms. The timing is telling. This comes as India plans to construct 60 dams on the Chenab River alone, potentially reducing Pakistan's water flow by 10 to 15% once operational. This is an act of war, and during lean seasons, the Chenab's flow is already reduced by 7 to 10% due to the existing Indian projects. The PCA judgment represents more than a legal victory. It's international recognition that India's behavior threatens global peace and water sharing conventions. With 153 countries sharing 286 transboundary rivers and 592 aquifer basins worldwide, India's precedent of unilateral treaty suspension poses an existential threat to international water cooperation. The dispute centers on design features of hydroelectric projects. India argues it needs design changes for sediment flushing, but Pakistan correctly insists that these must conform to Annexure D of the Indus Water Treaty, which outlines permissible features for run-of-the-river projects. India is essentially trying to circumvent treaty obligations while claiming environmental concerns, despite the fact that it has destroyed 70 acres of conifer forest for the Ratle project. Pakistan's measured response, forming technical committees, seeking international legal remedies, and developing comprehensive national policy, contrasts sharply with India's unilateral aggression. The PCA judgment validates Pakistan's position that international law matters, even when dealing with a neighbor that increasingly operates outside legal frameworks, and India has done that illegally. And this water dispute isn't just about rivers. It is about whether international treaties mean anything when one party decides to simply ignore them. Pakistan's approach, on the other hand, shows that there are alternatives to India's pattern of escalation and legal violations. We'll continue monitoring this developing story. Pakistan's technical committee begins its work and international legal proceedings advance, because this is a very important topic. And as we say, what India has done with regards to the Indus Water Treaty, it's no less than an act of war, and India must be held accountable for what it has been doing and for carrying on its merry way of actually creating a false hegemony over the South Asia. And it is about time that the world tells India to remain in its limits and honor the international agreements.
सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल दबाएं ताकि कोई खबर रह न जाए।